Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with classic chocolate ice cream sandwiches. That's right, I'm going to show you how to make a batch of these, exactly like the ones you remember from childhood or last week. And you'll be happy to know these are very simple to do, as long as you don't try to do rectangles, which complicates everything. So as long as you're okay with these being round, and it would be kind of crazy if you weren't, okay, you don't want to be a shape shamer. But anyway, if that's not a problem, we can go ahead and get started by mixing up our dry ingredients, which include some all-purpose flour, a little bit of salt, some baking soda, no, not powder, soda, and then last but not least, some high-quality Dutch processed cocoa. And all we need to do here is take a whisk and give this a thorough mixing until all our ingredients are evenly distributed. And by the way, at any point, if this mixture seems clumpy, chunky, or lumpy, feel free to sift it into a bowl to play it safe. But mine seemed fine, so I just went with a brief whisking. And that's it. Once that's set, we can move on to the rest of the batter ingredients, which will include some soft unsalted butter, to which we will add some white sugar, a little bit of brown sugar, plus a little splash of vanilla extract. And please use the real stuff. You do not want to know how they make artificially flavored vanilla. And then what we'll do is grab a spatula and mix and smear this all together until we have a relatively smooth paste. And yes, for one of the rare times in Food Wish history, I actually remembered to take my butter out of the fridge so it would warm up and be soft enough to work with. And if you do the same, this should mix together in just a couple minutes, at which point you should have something that looks like this. And then once that's been accomplished, we'll go ahead and add our flour cocoa mixture, along with some room temperature milk. And we will simply stir and fold this all together with our spatula until we have a nice, smooth, relatively stiff batter. And traditionally, the dry ingredients in the milk are added in several additions. But whenever given the choice between additions and an addition, if I can get away with it, I'll always just go with the addition. And here I notice no difference in the final product by adding everything at once. So I just like to toss everything in and mix it up. But anyway, once I'm happy with that, I'm going to grab a sorbet scoop and clean off the spatula, since that's what I'm going to use to transfer the batter onto the sheet pan. Oh, and you'll see I left a little bit on the spatula to sneak a taste. But you shouldn't do that, otherwise you're not going to have enough batter. Since this is going to make exactly 6 sandwiches, but if you eat some of the batter, it won't. So you've been warned. And then before we scoop the batter, I'm going to give this Silpat Lime baking sheet a little spray with vegetable oil, and then rub that in, since these chocolate cookies are extremely sticky, which they need to be to have the right texture. So a little bit of oil is not a bad idea. And that's it. Once lubricated, we can go ahead and scoop our batter onto the pan. And even though I'm only making 3 here for filming purposes, as I mentioned, this recipe will make 6 sandwiches, which would be 12 of these cookies total. But if you wanted, you could use more batter and do 8 to make 4 larger sandwiches. And other than maybe a minute or 2 of extra cooking time, everything here will work out exactly the same. But anyway, that's up to you. I mean, you guys are, after all, the size queens of your sandwiched ice creams. But I think this makes the perfect portion, and is very, very close in quantity to the classic version we're trying to reproduce here. And then once scooped, these will flatten out and get nice and round in the oven. But to play it safe, if you want to clean up any of the jagged edges, a slightly dampened finger will do the trick. And that's it. Once we're happy with those, they are ready to transfer into the center of a 350-degree oven for just 9 or 10 minutes, or until they look like this. And then, very important, as soon as they come out, we're going to give them the old tap-a-tap on the counter, 5 times to be exact, which is basically going to settle and compress that cookie a little bit and help give us that soft, sticky, chewy texture we're after. And that's it. Once we've tapped that, we will let that cool down to room temp on the pan, at which point we're going to transfer it into the freezer for about 10 or 15 minutes, or until it's nice and firm and very cold, at which point we will pull it out and do 2 very important things. We will make sure our cookies are not stuck to our silicone baking mat, which we always want to do by putting our hand underneath, and then gently coaxing that cookie off the surface. And then the second thing we're going to do, once all those have been released, is give these the old poka-poka with a chopstick to give the surface its iconic, classic ice cream sandwich appearance. And how many holes you go with, and exactly where you do them, is up to you. But personally, I think you need at least 10 or 12 to make these look right. And after all these decades, scientists can still not tell us why an ice cream sandwich with holes in it tastes better than one that doesn't have them. But still, that is a fact that no one can prove, but a fact nonetheless. And that's it. Once those holes have been properly punched, we will pop those back in the freezer so that they're nice and cold and firm before we fill them with our ice cream, which of course is the final step. So once we're ready to fill, we will pull those back out, and we will flip one cookie over and place 1 scoop of vanilla ice cream on top, and then simply press a second cookie down to form our sandwich. And like all similar operations, the first one is almost always the worst one. But don't worry, after a few they will improve. Or they won't, but no one will care, because they'll be eating ice cream sandwiches. And then what I do once I have that sandwiched is go ahead and wrap it in plastic. Because while you can serve immediately, I do like to keep these in the freezer for a few hours before I serve. Okay, they say that cookie absorbs a little bit of moisture from the ice cream. It gets even softer and stickier and more supple. But also the plastic allows us to clean up the sides and make it look a little neater, in case that kind of thing's important to you. And ideally, you're filling these near your freezer, since as soon as I finish one, I like to transfer it directly in so it doesn't start to melt. And that's it, once they're all done, and it possibly sat in the freezer for a few hours, we'll go ahead and pull one out, unwrap it, and serve it up. And that, my friends, round shape notwithstanding, is virtually identical to the ice cream sandwich we grew up eating. Or at least I grew up eating, usually purchased from the ice cream truck. And unlike many of these so-called authentic ice cream sandwich recipes, this cookie, even straight from the freezer, remains soft, supple, and sticky, which to me really is the key. Which reminds me, we could make a better, more intensely flavored chocolate cookie, but it's just not going to have the same texture. Oh, and speaking of soft, the following advice is going to sound a little strange, but I don't think you should use one of those fancy artisan vanilla ice creams. The ones that tend to be a lot richer and denser and much, much firmer when frozen. Okay, if you want to experience the nostalgia of your childhood ice cream sandwich, you're going to want to use just a basic, cheap, grocery store vanilla ice cream, which has a lot of air whipped into it, which means even when it's fully frozen, it is still relatively soft, which along with that soft, tender, chewy cookie is the perfect textural combination. But anyway, that's it. My take on the classic chocolate ice cream sandwich. What this version lacked in right angles is more than made up for by being much faster and easier. But no matter what shape you make them, or which ice cream you use to fill them, I really do hope you give these a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.